Okay, so after you perfect walking and running, then we start developing jumping skills. And your book divides them into 4 categories, some with 1 foot leading, some with 2 feet leading, some are in the horizontal direction, and some are in the vertical direction. So hopping is vertical jumping on 1 foot, and you stay on that foot. So you would start left foot down and right foot up by your bottom, and then jumping up and down on that left foot, right? So vertical jumping on 1 foot. Leaping is a horizontal jump from 1 foot. So you jump off of your left foot, but you should land on the opposite foot. And then that gives you that horizontal motion. So hopping 1 foot vertical and leaping 1 foot horizontal. And then horizontal jumping is with 2 feet, and then you're jumping horizontally, so out in front of you. And then vertical jumping is straight up in the air from both feet and landing on both feet. And the phases of jumping look similar to the phases of anything else we're looking at. So preparation, we bend our legs, we bring our arms back, and then we stretch out completely to go forward. And then we land, we cushion the impact by bending our knees and using our arms again. So that's part of the differences in the early development and later development is this part of the jumping, is the preparation and the landing aspects. That's where you're going to see the biggest differences. Okay, and then again, you can see all of these charts in your book that shows how the preparation and landing looks different from the early stages to the later stages. So you can see here they're just barely bending their knees, and then the final stages they're all the way down, so they're absorbing the whole impact. The launch angle is a lot greater in the mature form. Where the arm position is during preparation changes from the early to the late phases. So for jumping, boys develop just slightly, so 6 months earlier now than girls. So those are things that you can cue children to when they're moving, is bend your knees, put your arms back, swing your arms. Those are things to look for when you're doing assessment, and those are also things that you will coach them on. So then once we have like the single, running, hopping movements, then these are all, and walking, these are all combinations of those types of movements. So skipping is a run and hop, galloping is a run and leap type of movement, and slide is a horizontal walking. So skipping is, galloping is leading with the same foot every single time. You're not switching. Skipping is where you land on 1 foot, hop off of 1 foot, land on the other, and then lead with the other foot on the next attempt. So each step you're switching the foot for skipping, and galloping you're always leading with the same leg. And sliding is just horizontal movement, and it's similar to galloping, except you're sideways instead of forwards. Your hips are facing to the side instead of in the direction that you're going. So which one looks the most complicated? Okay, so skipping is probably the most complicated movement, so it develops last. The slide is probably the easiest, so it developed first. So then again, you can look at the charts. This is just a couple of them for skipping and galloping, and you can see a lot of the same changes from the beginning to the later stages in the movement of the arm, the length of the step, and those things. All right, so this one, in this case, girls develop skipping before the boys do. So we get 1. And we've talked about constraints several times in the different chapters. And so back to Knoll's model of constraints, we're looking at the individual, the environment, and the task, and how changes in any three of those can change performance. And so with the individual, their proportion of their head size affects their balance, right? And that's not something we can change right there in that moment. That's just something we have to compensate for. We teach them how to compensate for their head size when they're young. And then as they grow into their head and it becomes not as big of a challenge, then they start opening up the degrees of freedom to move their arms along with their legs, and coordination. And that's something that they have to learn. It comes with experience and practice. And that's something that you can coach them on. What we talked about earlier is bending your knees on the landing, and trying to jump further, and visualizing those things. Those are great cues. On the environment, things that you can do to make it easier is change the surface texture, change the slope, right? So if we're running across a flat surface, it's easier than running up a hill or down a hill. Decreasing distractions. For the task, just the surface size, right? Being able to balance on just a flat floor is easy. Once you put them on a beam, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. So think about that, and then how long they're doing it for, and that really goes into cardio endurance. Okay, so that's all the locomotor skills. I have several videos for you to go through to see each one of those, and to practice doing assessments and looking for those cues that we talked about that develop from the babies to the adults and the older kids.